welcome to the first episode of Sylvia Knit Stuff on my brand new channel, Sylvia's Stuff. I'll be talking about knitting and other fun crafty things here, so if you're interested, please do subscribe. If this is your first time watching my videos, welcome and thank you for being here. My name is Sylvia, I'm 34 years old, I live right outside of Paris, France with my husband and my cat, and I am an obsessive knitter. I do sometimes sew. The machine is there. There's a half abandoned project next to it. And I do crochet sometimes too. I've got a Scrappy crochet blanket on the hook. But today we're going to talk about knitting, and in general, this channel will be mostly about knitting, but I might do videos about other things as well. I actually started posting videos on YouTube like a year and a half ago. I started a channel called Sylvia Knits in Color, and I originally started uploading videos in English. But since I lived in France, I wanted to also kind of engage with the French knitting community because there's also a vibrant French-speaking vlog and podcast community here on YouTube. So I started posting in French also on that same channel. And my following in French took off a little bit more than the one in English, but I think ultimately the uneven engagement between the French and the English videos kind of hurt my channel in a way, or maybe like YouTube wasn't happy with that because I had some subscribers that would only watch some videos, some that would only watch others, and I think for the algorithm, engagement is key, and if you're having super uneven engagement, it's not going to want to promote your videos as much. So we're starting over, and hopefully this will go well over on this end. And if you want to find me on Ravelry or on Instagram, my username on those two platforms is SylvieRar. I'll put it down here at the bottom of the screen somewhere. It will also be linked in the description box below. I also recently signed up for a TikTok account. I finally gave in, and I've started posting little videos. Mostly, so far I've posted kind of like work from home outfit videos because I'm trying to get dressed on a daily basis. I'm a freelance translator. I have no coworkers. I don't like go out to an office. I don't even have like meetings so that force me to get dressed. So having to pick out fun outfits and then putting them on the internet, I think kind of helps. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, you can check out my TikTok, which is Sylvia's Stuff, also like the name of this channel, and it will also be linked below. So this video is going to be just like a standard little knitting podcast. I'm going to talk about the FOs that I've finished this year so far, because as I mentioned on my other channel, I posted videos, and the most recent English video I posted was everything I knit in 2023. I can also link that video below if you're interested. And I haven't filmed a podcast since I uploaded that video. So we're going to go over all of my FOs from January and February, and I have 4 current whips on the needles. Let's get started with the FOs. I've just folded them and put them in a pile here. So let's just have a look at that little pile. Dun, 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 dun. Aren't they beautiful? We've got some lace, some fun rainbow stripes, some color work, and some cables in this section today. The first finished object we're going to talk about today is this guy. This is my Eremophila or Eremophila. I'm not sure how you pronounce the word. It's the name of a plant. The Eremophila shawl. It's a pattern by Ambah O'Brien. And it's got this cool chevron zigzag thing going on. The yarn that I used to knit this shawl is from La Bien-Aimée. And so this is the Merino Singles in the colorway Grand Mamère. This was a fingering weight project, and it was knit up on 3.75 millimeter needles, and I like to wear it like this. I think the colors are really lovely, and I think they work really well with the pattern itself. They're not like competing for attention or anything like that. I think the zigzags just look really great in this kind of multicolor situation. And when I started, I originally had 2 skeins of this yarn. I currently have this much left, but I actually had more when I finished the shawl. I think I must have had like 30 or 40 grams, I think, left over. But then pretty quickly after finishing it, I used some of these leftovers to add a stripe to my scrap blanket. And so this is all that's left now. This shawl, the pattern is available in a fingering weight version and in a DK weight version. I'm not sure if there's a huge difference in the pattern itself between the two versions, but I think there are slightly different instructions at some points, but in general, the lace and everything is the same. And I actually started this project in March of last year. And what happened was I started it. I got kind of really into it for a little bit and then I completely abandoned it. I picked it up a couple weeks after abandoning it and put in just a couple rows and then promptly abandoned it again. So it kind of sat unloved for half the year in my little basket thing. And here I have this colorful basket where I put project bags in. And then in January, French YouTuber Lysandre Ourdin, she decided to start a challenge that was also like a cowl, like a knit along. It was called Challenge Je termine mes whips. So challenge to finish all of your whips, or like your lingering whips, because she designs a lot of socks. She designs a lot of colorwork socks. And so she had, no lie, like 20 or more pairs of socks that were unfinished. So she was like, I need to finish all this stuff and everyone should finish their projects with me. So this was the first kind of dormant whip that I pulled out and finished as part of the challenge. And so I finished it the challenge technically was only for the month of January, but I finished this on the 1st of February. So like almost, really, I was close. For this little guy, I realized when I was done that there was a chart, but the chart was huge. So I followed the step-by-step instructions, which were a little bit long. But once I kind of understood the logic of the lace, I got it and it was fine. But there were a couple of times where my stitch counts were a little bit off, especially right towards the end. I think I messed up right in the middle. And so there's a teeny bit of unevenness because I had to throw in like some random decreases and increases and stuff, I think. But I don't think it's super visible, and I think it's a really, really beautiful shawl. And I think that's all I have to say about this guy. Up next, I have another shawl. It's this guy here. So we can see there's a lot of color going on. It's really long. I can't hold out the entire thing. So this shawl it's really more of a scarf. I mean, it obviously has a triangular shape, but it's quite long and thin. This is called the Linus by a designer called Annette Cordes. She's German. And in a moment, I will take this off and put this on. So here we go. This is how I wear this little guy. I do like a double or a triple wrap, and then I'll tie a little knot here if I want to. Since it's asymmetrical, I put the point kind of more towards this side here. But I think with the wrapping, you kind of get a nice view of all the fun colors, but they all kind of blend together and just the colors are very joyful. And so the yarn that I used for this, I actually don't really have the names because I participated in Rebecca Clow, aka the Crayabea podcast, the person who has the Crayabea podcast. She organized a Scrappy Advent swap last holiday season, And I got paired up with Susan of the Wild Cottage Knitting Podcast here on YouTube. And so she curated this gorgeous rainbow fade for me, as you saw when I held out the shawl. In the Linus is just kind of like a very basic shawl pattern. You can make it as small or as big as you want. And so mine is a lot bigger than the one on Ravelry, like the picture of the pattern picture. And I also added I-cord all around. The I-cord yarn, I used some mohair. This is mohair from Gepard Garn, but I actually didn't buy it myself either. This was also from a scrap swap, actually. So I organized a beer and knitting night in Paris. And in December, I was like, hey, everyone bring scraps and leftover random yarn that you don't know what to do with, and let's do an exchange. And so I got like a ball and a half of this mohair. It's really soft. It's like a magenta fuchsia-y color. And so I thought that was kind of appropriate because it was the shawl knit with Susan's scraps and then use someone else's scraps to do the border. And I thought that worked really, really well. I knit this on 4mm needles and I absolutely zoomed through this. It was wild. Basically, I started it a little bit before we left to the United States for Christmas. I started it on December 17th. And then we left, I think, like 2 days later. So I left it here. I didn't bring it to the US. And then we got back to France on the 4th of January and I picked it back up, I think, the next day. And I think I was so tired and just like exhausted in general. And all I wanted to do was knit on something super basic and easy that I didn't have to think about at all. And this was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. I would just laugh and call like, my triangle. It was just my triangle. And all I wanted to do was work on my triangle. The I-cord at the end, that was long. It took me like a week to do the I-cord. I mean, on and off. I didn't work on it for a week straight without stopping or anything like that. And I did work on other things at the time, but this was like a very active project when I was working on it. And so I ended up finishing it on January 23rd, and I love it. It's really, really warm. It's not super deep, but because I can wrap it around so much, it does keep me very warm. Like, my arms are cold. I have a little crop top on and my belly's sticking out a little bit. My arms are up because I have garments to show you after and I just wanted to put on a base. But right now my neck and my chest are feeling very warm. So we're just going to leave it on for a little bit. I had an issue with the I-cord border. It's not really visible now that I'm wearing it, but with the pickup rate, I wasn't using a specific guide or anything. So I was just kind of like going with the flow with my pickup. And here, this part here especially, because I think I got it better in check as I went along. When I just hold up the shawl, it's a little bit wavy here, but just sitting like that, there's absolutely no problem, so I'm not too fussed about it. I never blocked this, I never washed it. I usually do wash and block all of my knits after I finish them, unless it's like a hat or something, because I can't be bothered. But I was just like, how do I dry this? Where do I put this? It's so long. I haven't measured it, but it's probably like 2 meters wide. But yeah, so that's my second shawl. And I haven't knit that many shawls in my knitting life. I've got, so the one I just showed you, this one that I knit out of one advent calendar, and one that I knit out of another advent calendar. So I think I have 4 shawls. Is that it? I think that might be it. I've knit 2 Sophie shawls that I've given to, one my aunt and the other one my husband. And like, I knit 1 shawl and I just felt like it was such a long and arduous experience, but I think I'm coming to appreciate shawl knitting a little bit more. And I think this year I'm going to try to make more shawls because I really do enjoy wearing them, even if I find knitting them kind of long and annoying. Next up, I've got my first garment of the day. Like, come on. This baby is my masterpiece. Well, she's not perfect, but she'll do. This is my Rumble Raglan, and give me a second and I'll put it on for you guys. Here she is. As I said, it's the Rumble Raglan by Lydia Morrow, and it is an all-over Colorwork t-shirt. It's knit in fingering weight yarn on 2.75 and 3.75 millimeter needles. The pattern is designed to do 2 or 3 colors, but you can do however many colors you want. I did 3 colors, and I changed 1 color every 14 rounds. And so the yarns that I used, this purple here, this purple is from Malabrigo. It's their sock base, which probably shouldn't be used for socks unless they're house socks, because it's a 100% superwash merino wool. And I used the colorway Violeta Africana, African violet in Spanish. And then for this lovely turquoise, this is from Manos del Uruguay. And it's their Alegría base, which is their sock yarn base. So it's a 75-25, and it's the colorway Swim. So I have 2 tonals and 1 variegated. So this is, it goes from kind of like mint green to turquoise to purple. And oh, the Violeta Africana, I bought it at Lil Weasel, which is a local yarn store here in Paris. The Manos del Uruguay, I got it from Fiber Space, which is a local yarn store in Alexandria, Virginia, near where my parents live. And then the gray, which I haven't mentioned yet. The gray here is also from Lil Weasel, and it's her own hand-dyed brand, just called Lil Weasel. And the base is called Lil Sock, and the colorway is called Après la pluie, which means after the rain. They are all 3 of them fingering weight, though they are slightly different weights. The Malabrigo sock has 402 meters per 100 grams, whereas the Alegría has 407 meters per 100 grams. So we're really not looking at a huge difference. But the Lil Weasel yarn is a bit thinner. It's 425 meters per 100 grams. So the fact that it was thinner and lighter means that you can see some irregularities more easily in this color. For the purple, I used almost the entire skein, but I didn't finish the other 2 skeins. For this garment, I actually did do a gauge swatch. The gauge for this top is 28 by 28 stitches and rows. So this was my gauge swatch, and I managed to be perfectly on gauge in this swatch, and so I was pretty happy about that. As I said, it's my first all-over colorwork garment. I've knit some colorwork socks before, but never something like this involved in terms of colorwork. It is fairly simple. It's just 2 by 2, and then here you have 4, and you just have to make sure you do your increases in the right color. But in terms of like complexity, it's pretty easy, but it's still all over the body. This was also a bit of an abandoned whip. And like, I know it was a total love at first sight thing. I even applied to test it. I didn't get into the test knit. When the pattern was released, I think I bought it fairly soon after it was released. I did my swatch, I cast on, I did the collar, like a month later. I think I semi-abandoned it. A month later, I did the short rows, and then I really abandoned it. So when did I start this actually? No, I started this in November of 2022, which is a pretty long darn time. It was abandoned for a year. And so as part of Lisandre's knit along, I picked it back up and I finished it. And I told you I used most of the purple. I actually had to cut my sleeves short because I was running out of yarn. When I finished the body, I knit the body to pattern. I'll insert some videos of me wearing it either later. But once I finished the body, I weighed my purple yarn and I only had about 20 grams left. So then I started this sleeve here. I only got this much done. I started knitting, and after every row I would weigh my purple, and I just saw that number going down pretty quickly. So I cut the sleeve short, and I also cut the ribbing on the sleeves short. And I did finish with an Italian bind off. Because this year I've decided I'm gonna try and maybe not necessarily take the easiest route. I'm gonna try to take the route that looks the best, including doing things like Italian and tubular bind-offs. And I did it on the body too, which was all a lot of stitches. I did make a couple mistakes, obviously. It's not perfect. Here, I don't know if that's something that went wrong with my short rows or what happened. I think I also noticed it kind of came out, but I think I had dropped a drop of coffee on it already. So there was a little bit of a stain here, but I tried to rinse and pat it out. Oh, here. It's not super visible, I think, but I'm not a very careful, cautious, coordinated person. So yeah, I already kind of stained it. Good job, Sylvia. I do have one kind of big issue with this pattern though, and you can kind of see what's happening here. The raglan is too deep for such a fitted top. And Lydia is currently relaunching this pattern actually with updated raglan depths, I think, and with bust darts also, which this doesn't have bust darts right now. And so hopefully the fit will be better on future versions. And if I knit this again, I would probably omit some of the rows where we do not increase, because there are, because it's like, you know, a regular raglan, you increase and then you don't. You increase and then you don't. Row, 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 row. Sometimes instead of having an increase row, you would have 3 rows without increasing. And I think that happened like 4 or 5 times. So I think I could very easily cut out some of those rows and have something that comes in and fits a little bit better. Because right now, like for example, yeah, see, this happens. It kind of bunches up if I move around, and I can pull it down and sort of fix it and put it back into place. But she sits a little bit funny. But I'm still obsessed with her because she is Gorgina. Because I did do this gauge swatch like over a year before I actually knit most of the garment. I was worried that as I was knitting, my gauge wasn't quite the same. And I actually had some issues with my gauge after I picked it back up. Like you could see when I had started knitting the short rows, everything was looking good. And then when I picked it back up, I think I struggled to get the tension kind of right for a little bit. It did even out with blocking though, I think. Not perfect though. And the issues are a lot more visible in the light gray. And so I was worried that my difference in tension might have affected the raglan depth. But then when I was blocking it, I measured it and I was hitting the measurements that were called for in the schematic almost perfectly. So she's beautiful, but she's not perfect. I have one last finished object for you guys, and it's a sweater this time. And she's a beauty. This is by Colette Pullover. And I'll throw her on for you guys in a second. This is my Colette Pullover. As you can see, she's not perfect, and I need to redo this part of her. But it's a pattern by Sari Nordland, and it's an all-over cable and lace. I mean, it's not really lace, it's just eyelets. So you alternate these cables and some garter and some eyelets, and rinse and repeat. And it's knit in a DK weight fingering. She designed it in a fingering or mohair, but she said you can use DK too. And I decided to use this yarn from the Wandering Flock. It's her merino superwash 100% merino DK base, and it comes in the colorway. It's in the colorway Moonstone, which is this lovely variegated pastel. It's got blues and pinks and purples, but also some like cream, and it's really, really lovely. I knit the size 4. I think I forgot to mention I knit the size 4 for the Rumble Raglan too. I knit the size 4 on this, but I didn't gauge swatch. I just kind of like rolled the dice on that one. And I'm supposed to have, I think, 26 centimeters of positive ease at the bust. And as you can see, I do have positive ease at the bust, but not quite as much, which has taught me that I think I'm a slightly tighter knitter than Sari Nordland. I had 6 skeins of this yarn, and I used up 100% of 5 of them, and then a little bit, maybe half, I think, of the 6th skein, but I knit mine full length. Hers is cropped. As I said, I didn't swatch, and I just dove right in with the recommended needles, which is 3mm for the ribbing and 3.5 for the rest of the body. And as you can see, like I knit the sleeves, she does 3 repeats of the lace and cable motif on the arms, and I did that, and the length was just perfect. I do like a bracelet length. And then on the body, I did 1 more repeat than she did, because I did the same number of repeats as she did, and I was worried that it was going to be a little too cropped, and I didn't want it to be super short, especially since it is like a DK weight sweater and it's got some heft to it. You start this pattern on the back. I'm not sure how well I can show it to you guys. You start on the back, you cast on the back neck stitches, and then you increase along this line here, which creates quite a lovely silhouette, I find. You increase along this line, you increase in pattern, which is all charted out, until you get to here, which is where you're going to join in the round later. And then you pick up stitches along this side here and along this side here for the fronts. Eventually you join them here, you knit down, and then you join them here, and then boop, the rest is pretty standard. I've seen that Sari's been releasing quite a few sweaters with this kind of construction recently, and I do quite like the fit. I think it fits well and it looks quite nice. I am enjoying the tighter sleeve on this, because most things that I knit have looser sleeves, and I do find that they get in the way. I love a puff sleeve. This cardigan sitting here, this is my champagne cardigan that I modified a little bit, and she has big old sleeves. But they definitely do get in the way a little bit sometimes. But I have realized that I kind of hesitate to put this sweater on because the color is so light, and I'm a clumsy person. I am terrified that I'm going to stain this, like I already stained my Rumble Raglan. So I'm not sure how much wear. I mean, I have been wearing it, but I feel like I have to be a lot more careful when I'm wearing it. But it is nice to have sleeves that don't get in the way if I'm doing the dishes or if I'm cooking. Well, I generally take it off before I start cooking because I would probably stain it right away. There's a decent amount of positive ease on the side, but I think I was off by like 5 to 10 centimeters. And because it is a full-length sweater, I can wear it with anything at the bottom. Like, it doesn't have to be a cropped pant or anything. I did my Italian bind off on here. It looks so nice. Looks better. I think it looks better on this one than on the Rumble because the Rumble uses twisted rib. And so I did my Italian bind off on the sleeves, on the body as well. And I knit my ribbing inside out. So generally, if you knit ribbing and you're knitting in the round, the wrong side tends to look neater. So what I did is I just did a short row turn as I started my ribbing and knit the ribbing inside out so it looks gorgeous. And I did the exact same thing with the ribbing at the bottom too. And the collar I also knit inside out, but the collar is an issue. It was actually much worse before. It was much worse, and I redid it, but kind of half-assedly. And so I only undid part of it and redid part of it, so it's a little bit better than before, but it's still like obviously biasing to one side here. So I need to kind of find the energy, the desire to fix that. I mean, I've worn it out a little bit already, but it would look nicer if it was straight, like on my Rumble Raglan, for example. I did make a small mistake with the decreases. So you decrease down here for the sleeve, and I misread the pattern, and so I think I did one decrease too few, and when I got to the cuff, and you have to do some decreases before you do the ribbing, I realized that I had a couple stitches too many, so I just threw in some extra decreases there, and then I mirrored the same thing on the other sleeve so they would be exactly the same. Nothing too major that went wrong other than that, just the collar and the decreases. This yarn is exceedingly soft, but as such, it's already starting to pill, like quite a lot. I don't know how well you can see it here, but under the arm, it's starting to look a little ragamuffin-y. But it is really soft and the colors are really beautiful, and I can always give it a shave if it gets too raggedy looking. Okay, so that's it for the finished objects for today. Now let's move on to the works in progress section, and I have 4 more projects to present to you today. So personally, I always like having a pair of socks on the go. I think it's great out and about knitting. Since I live right outside of Paris, I take the metro to get around or other public transportation. And so I always like to have some socks. This is a little bag that I sewed myself with a pin from Susan from the Advent swap. And this is the socks that I'm working on right now. I finished this one and I have another one on the needles. Not my favorite, honestly. When I kind of envisioned this, I think I should have done thinner stripes, and I wish this color was brighter, but what can you do? So these are socks that I'm making without any sort of pattern or anything. I just cast on 60 stitches. I did 20 rounds of half twisted rib. I didn't twist the pearls. And then I went into 2x2 broken rib. I chose to do broken rib because I wanted it to be kind of like a little bit kind of tight and comfortable. And also broken rib is better for striping than regular ribbing because you get a smooth transition if you switch colors on the knit round. And once again, with my do things better, not faster idea for this year, I did a heel flap and gusset. I messed it up a little bit though. I think I miscounted my rows and I was 2 rows short. So it's not really a big deal either. But these yarns, so 2 of these yarns are actually from the Advent swap that I told you guys about from my knitting meetup. This orange, I got 21 grams from a friend, and it's Filicolana Arwetta, and it's the colorway 252, which is a very bright orange. My main color is from another friend from the beer and knitting meetup, and it's a variegated gold stellina. It's nearly impossible to get stellina to show up on camera, but it's there, I promise. So it's like orange with green speckles and different shades of orange. And so that was from another friend, and she gave me 49 grams of that because she knit her very first pair of socks ever. I don't know the name of the base or the color or anything, but the dyer is Le Natelier, who is a French yarn person. I tried to look for like more information on her online. She has a YouTube channel. She has an Instagram, but I couldn't find like a storefront or anything. I think my friend bought it at some sort of event. And like also the stripe at the end just does not look that good. Like these are kind of like ugly. I'll wear them anyway. I will. They're socks. But it's not really what I had in mind. Oh, and this magenta color, it's called Magenta. It's from Malabrigo. It's their ultimate sock base, which actually does have nylon. So this is good for knitting socks. And it was my leftovers. I had 39 grams left. So I wanted to make sure I could use all 3 in the sock without running out. And so I kind of like weighed as I went along, and we're all good to start the second one now. And so my second one, I started it yesterday when I went to get my nails done. I had to wait a little bit. So I cast on the sock and I got some of the ribbing done, and I did some last night. But that's all I got so far. And this is being knit on 2.25 millimeter needles, which is pretty much what I always knit my socks on. Maybe I can show, maybe the Selena will show up here. Sort of. Yeah, these are my colors. Moving on. I have a shawl on the needles. I'm kind of stuck. I need to sit down and have a look at where the issue lies, but I am knitting the Sorbetto shawl by Nadia Crétin-Lechaine. But so far it just looks like a thong. It's a shawl that's knit from tip to tip like this. So this is one end, and you increase along here, but it never gets super, super wide. I am knitting this in, as you can see, 2 colors. It's a 2-color pattern. And so this first color here, this is a deep purple, and this is from Prue Yarns. She's a German yarn dyer, and her colors are just my kryptonite. I love everything she dyes, and I've ordered from her a couple times. This is her sole base, which is her yarn, her sock yarn base. It's 8515, and the colorway is Amethyst. Is this guy. So this is kind of like giving me Bog Witch a little bit. This is a kind of green, but it's also got kind of almost like oranges and purples and some different colors going on, and it's hard to make out, but there's also stellina in this as well. And this is from a French yarn dyer called Vulcan Yarn. She's a big Star Trek fan. And this yarn is actually, it was the full skein from her 2022 advent calendar, and so it's called Aurora Borealis. And it's merino, nylon, and stellina. Classic fingering meterage. The shawl is supposed to use 1 skein of each of these. I don't think it's supposed to use up the entire skein. We'll see how much I have left at the end. I didn't gauge swatch because it's a shawl. Like, I know that you don't necessarily have to swatch for something like a shawl, but if you don't swatch, you might run out of yarn, so hopefully we'll be okay. This is my first time knitting a pattern from Nadia, and if you knit, like, and you are in the English-speaking world, you might not have heard of her, but she's actually like wildly popular amongst French knitters. And I think it's really interesting to see who knits what's popular in one country versus another, because obviously I watch British knitters, I watch American knitters on YouTube, and I watch French knitters, and it's not always the same styles, the same colors, the same designs that are really popular, like, and so that's something I think when I put out my French videos, I tend to do things that are pretty different than what other people are doing, but for once I'm knitting something like very popular in French yarn world. And I saw this shawl at first on Lauriane, L'Eau Demoiselle, here on YouTube. She knit this in, I think she did like a cream and an orangey brown. And the shawl has these stripes and these solid colors, but it also has some fun wavy lace. So you do the lace section in your contrast, and I got to the lace, I started knitting the chart, and then when I got to the first row with yarn overs, and I don't remember if they're knit two togethers or SSKs or whatever, I was like 3 stitches off. So I need to sit down and count this and figure out where things went wrong, because I had 3 stitches too few on the needles when I got to the middle here. So we need to have a look and figure that out so I can make some progress on this bad boy. Because as I said, this year I want to knit more shawls. And I already want to, I'm like feeling the urge to cast on more shawls. Like, oh, I want to knit. Also, another resolution for this year, I want to learn how to knit brioche. As you can see, I've done cables, I've done color work, I've done lace. Brioche is still something that I haven't tried yet. And I started this shawl on February 14th. Hopefully we'll finish it before not too long, but there's still quite a bit to go. And now it's sweater time. So I currently have 2 sweaters on the needles, and here is the first one, which lives in a little tote bag from Fiber Space. I actually turned this tote bag into a drawstring. I found a tutorial on YouTube. It's really easy. You just cut off the straps and you feed them through the channel here and tie a knot. But here is sweater number 1. She's so pretty. Oh my God. I love her. This is my Elfmail sweater it's a pattern by Danny Miga, and I discovered it through Kat Weaver here on YouTube, and she has knit this pattern a couple times, and the very first time I saw it, I was just like, that's amazing looking and I need it. And so it was on my to knit list for quite a while. I actually did swatch for this over the summer, hoping to cast it on sooner, but you know, stuff happened. And so when I was finally ready to cast it on, I washed this little swatch, I measured it, and I realized I was off by 2 stitches. The gauge was 24, the gauge is 24 stitches per 4 inches, but I was at 22. And so I had swatched with the recommended needle, which is a 3.75, I think, or a 3.5. And so I decided to go down to, I should have maybe gone down to 3.25, honestly, but I went down to a 3 on the body. And I don't know if my gauge has tightened up a lot or if it's just the difference between the 3.5 and the 3, but the stitch pattern seems quite a lot smaller on the actual garment. And it is designed to have negative ease. I'm knitting the size 4, and I'm using 2 absolutely gorgeous yarns. Like, this is going to be an amazing garment. So first of all, for my black, my main color, which not the easiest to work with, that was my first time knitting with black, and even making out whether I was on a knit or a purl, it was difficult. With this 2x2 ribbing. Like, you would think you would be able to tell easily, but because it is quite thin, the knits and purls almost look the same. But this black yarn, you can see how this is just like a noodle. This is Draperina. This is like, whew. Yeah, she does not stand up. So this yarn is, it's called Yeti. It's 50% yak and 50% silk. There's a bit of a halo. Oh, she's blowing out. She is blowing out. There's a bit of a halo. It definitely doesn't have the elasticity of wood. My goodness. It definitely doesn't have the elasticity of wool, but she's fuzzy, she's soft, she drapes, and she is beautiful. And I bought this at the Fête de la Laine last year. So Fête de la Laine is a yarn fair that happens in Malakoff, which is a suburb of Paris. And it's in 3 weeks. I bought this from the Atelier de Mickey stand, but she told me she just buys it like this. Like, if you search Yeti yak silk, You can find this base in a couple different colors, and it's a fingering weight, but it is pretty thin. It's a 466 meters per 100 grams. So it's a little bit thinner than the other color, but I think they're working together really, really well. Then the other color is this fun dude. And so the Elfmail pattern, it's recommended to use one variegated yarn and one solid yarn with a good deal of contrast to get this really fun effect. And this is just broken seed stitch knit with 2 colors. It's actually really, really simple to do. And this yarn is from Vulcan Yarn again, French yarn dyer. And this is her alpaca sock base. And the colorway is Graffiti Neon. And I adore this base. I caked up both of the 2 skeins because you need 2 skeins of each color. And so I caked up both, and I'm alternating the variegated. So I can't show you like the level of drape in the skein. And it wasn't quite as like droopy and drapey as the yak silk, but it was still pretty like soft. And then this, because it has alpaca, it's 20% alpaca. It also has a lovely halo. So I think combining these 2, they both have some fuzz, they both have beautiful drape, and they have a great contrast. And I think it's working out really beautifully together. These guys, I also purchased them at the Fête de la Laine, but the year before, so 2 years ago now, and they're finally getting worked into something. And when I bought these, I bought a few other skeins of this base, and I knit a sweater out of it, and I love that sweater. I just knit a basic raglan, but it's so soft. It holds its shape actually really well for something with alpaca in it. And it's really lightweight and beautiful. I also went down a needle size for the ribbing, so I did the ribbing in 2.75. The rest is being knit in 3. It's going, you know, it takes a while to knit a sweater in 3 millimeters, but what can you do? I really love the raglan detail, though it's hard to make out. It's very hard to make out because it's kind of like black, but you do your raglan only in your main color, and you do that by knitting, wrapping your yarn twice, and then you slip it on the next round, so you only have the black raglan stitches. I just split for the sleeves this morning, and I haven't tried it on, though before I split I put it on, and it seemed to come down low enough, and it seemed to be sitting okay, so I'm not too worried about the fit. I think the fit's going to be quite lovely, and I just need to give it a try before I go on a little bit farther to make sure that it doesn't like come up too far into my armpits or anything like that, because I should probably check my gauge on the project too. I did make one change though. I knit the collar for longer than the pattern said to, because it's quite an open boat neck, and I wanted it to kind of close up a little bit more, so I knit like 2 inches of ribbing instead. The short rows in the back, they're just knit in the main color in stockinette, which I don't think looks amazing. I had found instructions on someone's project page to knit them in pattern, but it was, when I tried to do it, I think it was like after work, and I was kind of tired, and I wanted to get the short rows done and keep on going, and I think I read the instructions and my brain was just like, does not compute, and so I just jumped in and did them like the pattern says in one color. Though later I thought it could have been a cool idea to do them in ribbing, so it almost looks like an extension of the ribbing instead of like a random bit of black there, but not a super big deal. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I'm knitting the size large. And I started this on February 5th, and I finished the raglan already, so it's taken me a couple weeks to just finish the raglan. I'm not a monogamous knitter though, so I'm not sure how long this will take me to finish. Hopefully I won't like abandon it halfway and pick it up 6 months later like I do sometimes with my projects, because it would be nice to get this done, especially since it is a lightweight fingering sweater. I love hate fingering weight. Obviously knitting fingering weight garments takes a lot longer, but I love how lightweight they are. I love how they look. I love the drape. Like this sweater, this is heavy. This weighs like more than 500 grams. This is going to be super light and drapey and beautiful. Obviously you don't have the same warmth factor either, but you know, you can always layer something under and on top of fingering weight sweater too if you need to. I also, since I'm alternating these guys, I have 3 I have 3 cakes of yarn attached here, and oh my god, do they get tangled. Even if I'm knitting on a round, I untangle everything, and then I grab my next color and somehow everything has wrapped around itself again. I'm just like, why? How? So not the most fun to deal with, but it's looking really lovely. I had some issues a little bit here. So when you change your colors, it's right at the raglan line, which means that you don't have some sort of strange demarcation because you come to a full stop at the raglan line. And so you don't have anything funky happening from row to row in the seed stitch. But my raglan line isn't as clean because I'm carrying all my yarns, and it's harder to keep your tension perfect when you're switching between your yarns. But it's not super visible, and it's even harder to show on camera that it's not perfect, but that's okay. One last project for you guys today. This is in a project bag that I got at Zostren, which is a chain store from Denmark, but they have lots of fun crafty things, and at one point they had knitting project bags. And my next project is the Halu by Caitlin Hunter. Pretty difficult to show the details on camera because it's kind of dark. Maybe with the light coming in the window over here, you can kind of see. And the yarns that I'm using are from a French yarn dyer called L'Enamouré. Kind of like some wordplay with Enamouré, enamored, and laine yarn, wool. And they show up more blue on camera, but it's like a forest green with a little bit of bluishness to us, but it really is a really lovely deep forest green more than anything. I find that greens and blues struggle to show up properly on videos, unfortunately. And I have never knit myself a green sweater. I mainly knit in pinks and purples. So a green sweater is something different for me. But I actually saw this color on L'Enamouré's Instagram, I think like a year ago or more. And it was just like an instant, I need that moment. It was so beautiful. And so I bought it recently though. I bought it at Création Savoir-Faire, which is a massive craft and DIY fair in Paris. And the color, let me get the labels. So I only wound up the first one of each. So I can show you the skeins. They look like this. Once again, they're less blue in person. And so the mohair, the base is called Orphée. It's like Orpheus. It's 72% mohair, 28% silk, and it is beautifully soft. The color is called Se promener en forêt, walking in the forest. And the fingering weight is a 100% merino. The base is called Athena. Same colorway. Se promener en forêt. I wish you could see the color correctly though, because it's so lovely. And I think jewel tones really do suit me and my skin tone. Not that I think about that necessarily when I pick out colors. Like, I don't like to subscribe to the whole idea of you need to dress to flatter yourself. You should only wear certain colors that look the best. Like, sure, it's nice to want to like look good, obviously, but I'm not going to let myself be limited by the seasons. Like, oh, you can only wear, you know, like warm colors in the fall. You should wear pastels in the spring, bright colors in the summer. No, I'm going to wear what I want, whenever I want. And I'm not going to let that be dictated by whatever. But I think jewel tones do look nice on me in general. Not sure what is happening here. I have 3 skeins of each, which should be more than enough, I think, to finish this sweater. I did do some weird gauge things with it though. Like, as I was sitting and preparing my notes for this episode, I realized, I was like, what did you do, Sylvia? That's not right. I swatched for this, and I did weird things. I did weird things. I don't know. I realized when I was knitting my swatch here, at first I was like super tense and knitting really tight. And then to kind of counter that, I think I don't remember which is, like, it's hard to tell actually. I think this, yeah, this is the top. So I started knitting really tight, and then I kind of was like, oh, why am I knitting so tightly? I don't know. So I loosened up, and I think I loosened up quite a bit more. It's hard to tell. And I kind of measured my gauge in the middle. And I think around here I was at 18 stitches per 4 inches. And the gauge for this project is 19 stitches. So I'm not sure how the fit on this is going to turn out. It might be a little bigger than expected, but I think it'll fit. And I really love the neckline on this. You have a line here of knit stitches, and you do increases to create a funky looking V-neck. Can't really model it for you guys yet, especially on this short little cable, but it creates a nice V-neck that kind of sits a little bit lower. It's not a tight neck or anything, but I'm not too worried about my weird needle situation because, like, I think this is gonna be okay. But yeah, so I went up 1 needle size, and I'm using 3.5 millimeter needles for the ribbing and 4 for the body instead of 3.25 and 3.75. And this, I actually started this on the very same day as the Elfmail. And I guess you can see which one has been kind of calling to be more, because I haven't even finished the yoke on this. And it's obviously knit on much bigger needles, much bigger, 4 millimeters instead of 3. It was my first time doing little bobbles. I did just use Caitlin's method though. She has a link to her YouTube channel, and she has a tutorial for her favorite kind of bobble. And what's nice about her bobble, I think they're pretty perky, is that you don't have to turn your work. It's quite easy to make. And yeah, the bobble rows were long, especially the ones with the 2 per repeat, but I got it done, and now I'm done with the bobbles. I did put stitch markers between each lace repeat because I don't trust myself. I'm easily distracted. I lose my spot, and I see myself making mistakes all the time. Eating mohair. I see myself making mistakes all the time, and so I'm like, okay, don't care how good of a knitter you are, Sylvia, just put your little stitch markers, even if there are a bajillion, because it'll help you, it'll like prevent headaches. And it's been working pretty well. Like if I make a mistake, I see it immediately, because if I get to the end of the little section and it's off, I fix it right away. I think the lace on this is really beautiful. When I first saw this pattern, I don't know where I saw it actually, but between the neckline, the fuzziness, the lace, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm not a huge lace knitter. I don't like really intricate lace. It's not really my style. So I'm like, I don't have plans to knit a bunch of really detailed lace things, but every once in a while I'll do something like this, and I think it's really nice. As of now, I've just been knitting to pattern, and I haven't made any changes. Hopefully it'll all fit okay in the end. I was a little bit worried though, because I've heard that Caitlin Hunter patterns sometimes have issues, and she doesn't necessarily fix them, especially even if they've been like commented on over and over again. But so far, I've had no issues whatsoever. I find it a little bit wordy in places, but she's gonna be beautiful. I do have one little last thing I want to show you though. So my friend Brenda took up crochet last year, and she made me this cute little scarfy thing. She crocheted this for me. It's called the Heartstopper Scarf by Katie Jones Knit. It's up on Ravelry, the Heartstopper Scarf. She used like a white or a cream cotton, held it with some purple mohair here. And here she used wool and mohair. And it was funny because we met up and I was teaching her to knit, and I brought this. She was like, but it's the exact same color. Like, it's the exact same color, which is hilarious. But yeah, a cute little crochet scarf. It's nice and warm. Maybe I'll wear it next time I go out. And I think she's adorable. So thank you so much for being here with me. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did enjoy this video, especially since it's the very first video on this channel, please do like the video, leave me a little comment. You know, the more engagement you have with your content, the more YouTube is going to promote it. So if you enjoyed this and you want to see more stuff like this, please do let me know. All right, have a great day. Happy knitting, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.